Okay, magandang araw sa lahat. So, sa series of videos na ito ay i-discuss natin yung tungkol sa mga vectors. Ngayon, familiar tayo sa two-dimensional coordinate system where we have two axes, the x and the y axis. Now, we will be dealing with vectors both in 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions. So, kailangan nating i-introduce ang isang bagong coordinate system which will have 3 dimensions. Okay. So this is the rectangular coordinate system in 3 dimensions. Okay. So meron tayong tatlong axis. We have the x. So ito yun. So this is the axis which is pointing towards you. And then papunta naman sa kanan yung y-axis. And then yung z-axis yung papunta sa taas. So dito sa drawing na to, ang nakikita lang natin ay yung mga positive sides nung tatlong axis natin. But just like in the two-dimensional coordinate system, okay, of course, meron mga negative sides itong x, y, and z axis. So, yung negative part ng x-axis ay ito. And then, yung sa y-axis naman, ito. And then, yung sa z-axis ay ito. Ayan. Yung intersection ng tatlong axis is called the origin. Okay. Now, the set of all points in the three-dimensional space is denoted by R3. Okay. Now, there are two methods for drawing the three axes. Okay. We will be using the right hand rule or the right-handed method, where if you look at your right hand, the z-axis will your thumb rather will point towards the direction of the z-axis, and then yung wrist nyo naman will point towards the direction of the y-axis. In the left hand rule, or on the left-handed method, so same thing, the z-axis corresponds to the direction of your thumb, and then the y-axis corresponds to the direction of your wrist. Okay, but the difference here is flipped yung x and y axis. So dito sa right hand rule or right-handed method, yung x-axis yung papunta sa direction ninyo. And then yung y-axis naman yung papunta sa kanan. Dito sa left-handed method, yung y-axis yung papunta towards you. And then yung x-axis naman yung papunta sa kanan. Okay. So ito yung gagamitin natin. Okay. So again, we call R3 as the set of all points with the coordinates A, B, and C, where A, B, and C are real numbers. Okay. So how do we locate points in R3? Okay. So suppose yung A, B, and C natin ay positive. You can imagine the point P with coordinates A, B, and C as the point which lies on this corner of this rectangular prism. But without actually drawing the rectangular prism, how do we locate the point with coordinates A, B, and C? Okay. So, ang gagawin natin, we're going to count A units along the x-axis. So, ito A units ito. And then B units, okay, along the direction of the y-axis. And then C units pataas. Yan. Which is along the direction of the z-axis. So for example, gusto nyong i-locate yung point with coordinates 4, 5, 6. You count 4 units, okay, along the x-axis, and then 5 units towards the right, and then 6 units pataas. Now if you want to locate the point with coordinates negative 3, 2, and 4, okay, so the difference here is negative yung x-coordinate natin at yung z-coordinate. So kung negative, ang bilang natin ng units ay towards the opposite direction of that particular axis. So negative 3 yung x-axis natin. So 3 units along the direction of the negative x-axis. Okay. And then yung y-axis, yung y-coordinate natin ay positive. So 2 units punta sa kanan. And then yung z-axis natin, z-coordinate rather, is negative. So 4 units, so instead of pataas, 4 units pababa. Ayan. And then you will arrive at that point. So let's look at these examples. So plot the points 1, -3, 4, and -1, 3, and 4. Okay. So before we start, i-drawing ko muna yung tatlong axis natin. Suppose ito yung Z, ito yung Y, and then ito yung X. Unahin natin ito. Itong 1, -3, 4. So 1 unit papunta sa harap. So along 1 unit along the x-axis. Na negative yung y coordinate natin. So 3 units towards the left. So 1, 2, 3. Ayan. And then 4 units pataas. So 1, 2, 3. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. So ito na ngayon yung location ng point. So if you actually want to draw the rectangular prism, so if you want to better visualize the location of the point, then ito yan. So ito yung rectangular prism natin. Ito yung base niya. Ayan, it has a height of 4 units. And then yung point natin is this corner of that rectangular prism. So locate natin yung next point natin. -1, 3, -4. So negative yung x coordinate natin. So 1 unit papunta dun sa negative side ng x-axis. So ito yun, 1 unit. And then 3 units towards the right. So 1, 2, 3. And then -4 yung z coordinate. So 4 units pababa. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ito na yung point natin. So if you want to draw the rectangular prism, ito naman siya. Itong point na to, yung point na hinahanap natin kanina. Okay. Now, let's introduce the concept of coordinate planes and octants. Okay. So, in 2 dimensions, kung meron tayong x and y axis lang, we have 4 quadrants. Okay. So, in 3 dimensions, we no longer have the usual quadrants. What we have instead are the octants. So how do we determine those octants? So the coordinate axis taken in pairs determine 3 coordinate planes. We have the xy plane, which is determined by the x and y axis, the xz plane determined by the x and z axis, and the yz plane determined by the y and z axis. So itong red na plane na to, okay, so this is the plane containing both the x and y axis. So siya ngayon yung xy plane. Itong blue plane naman na to, okay, it contains both the x and z axis. So siya yung xz plane. And then itong green na plane, it contains both the y and the z axis. Okay. So siya ngayon yung YZ plane. Okay. So of course, yung mga axis natin ay they extend infinitely in 2 directions. So itong mga coordinate planes natin, infinite din yung surface area nila. Okay. So finite lang yung naka-drawing dito, but of course, infinite sila. So imagine naka-extend itong mga planes natin and towards infinity, and you can imagine them dividing the space into 8. So itong part na to, this is 1 octant, ito 2, here 3, 4. So we have 4 octants here sa upper half, and then we have another 4 octants dito sa lower half. And we'll have a total of 8 octants. Okay, now let's look at the distance formula. So in R2, the distance between 2 points with coordinates x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2, okay, is given by this. So ito yung usual na distance formula na alam natin. The distance is equal to the square root of quantity x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus quantity y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. Okay. So the distance in R2 is just the square root of the sum of the squares of the differences of the respective coordinates. Okay. Now the distance between 2 points in R3 is, it looks similar. It's completely analogous. Okay. But since we have an additional coordinate z1 and z2, okay, so we add this term in the distance formula. So the distance now is equal to the square root of x sub 2 quantity x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus quantity y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared plus quantity z sub 2 minus z sub 1 squared. Okay, let's look at an example. So find the distance d between the points 2, 3, negative 1 and 4, negative 1, 3. So let's use the formula. So d is equal to the square root. So square root nung sum ng mga squares ng differences ng mga coordinates. So you can either have, you can go from here to here. You can write 4 minus 2, negative 1 minus 3, and then 3 minus negative 1. Or you can go towards this direction. You will get the same distance. Okay. Since naka-square naman yung mga sinusubtract natin. Okay. So suppose ito yung gagamitin natin. So 4 minus 2 and squared, and then negative 1 minus 3 squared, then plus 3 minus negative 1, 3 minus negative 1, and then let's just simplify it. Okay, so 4 minus 2 is 2 squared, so that's 4, plus negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4 squared, that's 16, plus 3 minus negative 1, that's positive 4, and then square it, you get 16. Okay, you get square root of 36, so that the distance is equal to 6. Okay. Now let's look at the equation of a sphere. Okay. Ano nga ba ang definition ng isang sphere? So the sphere, so if we have a fixed point which we are going to call the center, so imagine as a center to nitong sphere na to. Let's call this C. So the sphere is the set of all points such that its distance from a given point called the center and is the same. Suppose R yung distance nito. So if I call this P sub 1, then the distance between P sub 1 and the center is R. If I have another point here, P sub 2, then yung distance niya from the center should also be R. Okay. So we can look at a sphere as the three-dimensional version of a circle. Okay. So in R2, this is the equation of a circle. If our center is x naught, y naught, and our radius is R, we have x minus x naught squared plus y minus y naught squared equals R squared. Now in R3 naman, the equation of a sphere, yan, with center x naught, y naught, z naught, so this should be z naught. Sorry for that. So x naught, y naught, z naught, and radius r is given by this. So quantity x minus x naught squared plus quantity y minus y naught squared plus quantity z minus z naught squared equals r squared. So saan galing itong formula na to? Actually, galing lang to dun sa distance formula natin. Ito. Since yung definition natin ng sphere is a set of all points na parehas yung distance from the center, if I have an arbitrary point here, which is P, with coordinates x, y, z. Yan. And then yung C natin, yung center has coordinates x naught, y naught, z naught. Okay. So from the distance formula, okay, so distance, the distance between P and C is r. So r, that's the distance. And then using the distance formula, it's equal to the square root of x, quantity x minus x naught squared plus quantity y minus y naught squared plus quantity z minus z naught squared. Right. Now, how do we get from this formula to this? Well, all you need to do is square both sides. So after squaring both sides, yung radical natin sa left side mawawala, magiging ganito na siya. And yung right side naman natin, when we square this, of course, we just get r squared. So dyan lang galing yung equation of a sphere. Okay. Let's work on this problem. Find the center and radius of the sphere with this equation. Okay. So itong equation natin, hindi siya dun sa form na meron tayo. Ito. So kailangan natin siyang i-transform into this particular form para malaman natin kung ano yung center at ano rin yung radius. So ang gagawin natin, let's collect all the terms containing x. So that's x squared minus 2x. Ayan, collect natin. And then, collect din natin lahat ng terms na may y. Dalawa lang naman sila, yung y squared tsaka yung minus 4y. And then, all terms containing z, dalawa lang din. Z squared plus 8z. And then, yung constant, transpose natin dun sa kanan. Magiging negative 17 siya. So next na gagawin natin, we will do completing the square on each of these three groups of terms. So in that process, mag-add tayo ng constant. Kung ano yung constant na in-add natin sa kaliwa, i-add din natin dapat dun sa kanan. So complete natin itong square dito sa first group of terms natin. So x squared minus 2x. So how do we do completing the square ulit? Well, ang gagawin natin, kunin natin yung coefficient ng x in this particular group, yung x. I-divide natin by 2 and then i-square natin. So, negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1 and then square natin, it's equal to 1. So, 1 yung i-add natin. Then, yun din yung i-add natin dun sa kanan. So, negative 17 plus 1. Let's do that with the second group of terms. So, yung coefficient ng y is negative 4. Negative 4. Divide natin by 2. That's negative 2. And then, square natin, we get 4. So, plus 4. Then, same thing. Add natin sa kanan. And then, for z, we have z squared plus 8z. Coefficient ng z is 8. Divide by 2 is 4. Square that, you get 16. So, 16 yung i-add natin. So, plus 16. Okay. So, i-add natin tong negative 17 plus 1 plus 4 plus 16, you get 4. Now, itong tatlong grupo na to, perfect square sila. Itong x squared minus 2x plus 1, that's equal to x minus 1 quantity squared. Ito naman is equal to y minus 2 quantity squared plus ito naman is equal to z plus 4 quantity squared. Okay. So we have now transformed this equation into the equation of the sphere. So ano ngayon yung radius natin? Radius natin, so itong nasa kanan natin, this is r squared. So kailangan natin kunin pa yung square root niya. The square root of 4 is 2, so the radius is 2. And then the center will be 1, 2, and negative 4. Okay. So bakit kailangan natin gawing negative? Bakit hindi negative 1, negative 2, and positive 4 yung coordinates ng center? Well, kung babalikan natin yung formula natin, we have x minus x naught. So if we have x minus 1, then x naught is equal to 1. Okay. So there you have it. We have radius 2 and center 1, 2, negative 4. Okay. So another formula that we will extend to R3 is the midpoint formula. So the midpoint of the line segment connecting P1, which has coordinates x sub 1 and y sub 1, and P2 with coordinates x sub 2, y sub 2 in R2. So ito lang yung coordinates ng midpoint. Basically, ina-average lang natin yung mga coordinates. So ganun din sa R3. Kunin lang natin yung average nung tatlong coordinates. So yung x-coordinate ng midpoint will be the average of x sub 1 and x sub 2, which is x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2. Yeah. So same thing with the y and z coordinates. Okay, so let's answer this. Find the midpoint of the line segment connecting the points 205 and 210, negative 7. So midpoint, we just have to get the average of the coordinates. So x coordinates are 2 and 2, so 2 plus 2 divided by 2. Y coordinates are 0 and 10, so 0 plus 10 divided by 2. Z coordinates are 5 and negative 7, so 5 minus 7 divided by 2. And therefore, the coordinates of the midpoint are 2, 5, and negative 1. Okay, so we're done with the basics of the three-dimensional rectangular coordinate system. And in the next video, we will introduce the concept of vectors.